I was stood videoing the show. Have we started it?
We haven't yet, but I have just started recording on the off chance, so I don't have to tell you to say this again.
Oh, right. Oh, good. Well, anyway, so I was videoing, and as I was videoing, looking down at the screen, one of the lads who works for us, Joe, they put a little half hitch in the tent door, in the loop that keeps it closed, because it can be quite windy outside, just to kill, because it has to be very dark inside. Obviously, it's a dark tent, completely black. And suddenly some kids had been in there, obviously anticipated that the werewolf was going to appear in this particular show, and I could suddenly see hands and faces pressing against the canvas of the tent doors, and then underneath his legs, between his legs, these little boys popping out, little kids popping out from under his legs, and then realising that they were putting pressure, so much pressure on the door, we couldn't open the tent doors to let everyone out. Meanwhile, the presenter inside is shouting, the werewolf is approaching them, and having just appeared via Pepper's Ghost, and the presenter's saying, "Get out, he'll kill you, get out, he'll kill you." And of course they're all trying to get out, and so I had to drop the camera, rush over, push them back in, push the doors to so we could release it, and then the flaps of the tent flew open, and of course this huge pile of people fell out as I thought about our public liability.
Yeah, right. There's shades of the Sunderland disaster in here. So.
It was great. It was, but it was fine. No one was hurt. It was absolutely fine, And they all came running out. And that's what I get a kick out of every time we do that show. Yeah. Sorry, I was launched into...
It's great. It's very interesting. And so, I guess we've sort of started talking about the sideshow stuff now.
Yes.
So perhaps you could just, for members who haven't had a chance to see any of this kind of thing, explain a little bit about what the sideshow that tours around is, and then we can talk about some of the kind of background of it and things.
Yes. Okay. I've been a great friend of John Gresham's, who was a member of the Magic Circle, was a fire eater, a sideshow proprietor, a cinema proprietor, and a museum proprietor, and a magician. For many years, I was in rep in Hull, and John and Pat Gresham came to see the shows, and I'd met John through Hull Magician Circle in the late 1960s. So I've known him for a long time. Sadly, he died over 20 years ago, and his sideshows, which he had many of at the time in the 1950s and 60s, he toured all over the country with them. He had them at Bellevue in Manchester, at Dreamland in Margate, at Pleasurelands in Rhyl in Wales, at Porthcawl in Wales, also at in Great Yarmouth at the pleasure park there. So over a number of years he'd had a lot of different sideshows, usually at seaside resorts, but also at back-end fairs. And these are the days when you would pay sixpence or a shilling, sixpence, 2.5p these days, I think, to go and see a headless lady, or a girl in a goldfish bowl, or Miranda, the girl entombed in 2 tons of water. And I remember going to see shows like this, and a couple of John's shows, in the late 60s, and paying my money to go and see them. And that was great fun. Every fair had a show row of live shows. Some were real midgets, giants, others were illusion based. Lots of different shows. And it made a big impact on me when I was a youngster, touring around and seeing these, going to fairs. Anyway, in the later on, after John had died, talking to Pat Gresham and to Eddie Dawes at Eddie's house, we thought maybe it'd be an idea to resurrect one of John Gresham's shows for the Hull Magician Circle dinner. And Pat claimed that all the props and scenery and stuff was in her barns in East Yorkshire. Well, John Gresham put them some of the shows in storage in 1969. This is all a bit rambling. Will it be okay, this, for you?
Yeah,
Will?
of course. Once we finish talking about stuff, I'll transcribe it and then I'll edit it down to a tidy version, and I'll send you the tidy version to check to make sure I haven't messed anything up. So
this is just a bit sort of stream of consciousness off the top of my head, really. So
yeah, but
anyway,
this is nice, I think.
Okay, fine. Well, if it's interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
And listen, if any of this comes out and you think this is a load of bollocks, nobody's going to be interested in this, then I will not be offended in the least. Really, honestly, I have no ego about this. Okay, so if you don't want to use it, that's absolutely fine. I'm just passionate about these things, and I realise other people might not be so. Anyway,
right.
So Hull Magician's Circle. So we decided we'd try and do this and resurrect the show. The Girl in the Goldfish Bowl seemed an obvious one. Well, as I said, when Pat said they were stored, and they went into storage in 1969, simply because the market for sideshows was really dropping out. It was people weren't going to Scarborough, they weren't going to Great Yarmouth, Rhyl, Margate on holidays anymore. It was the early 70s, late 60s rather, and they were going on package holidays now to Spain. And they weren't going to seaside resorts, and so it became more and more difficult to make money with the shows. And John decided he'd pull them, put some of them in his barns. Sadly, over the years since he died, they had, if you imagine barns and open barns as well, with pigeons, rats, and other rodents, and stuff gets moved around, and there's dust and there's dirt, and nothing's neatly. It's not like you're going into a storage place where stuff is neatly flight cased, labelled, and beautifully arranged. It wasn't the case at all. It became a search, a sort of a detective story to try and find things that might be associated with a show. And I'd never seen John Gresham's Girl in the Goldfish Bowl.
Okay.
And Pat had a very dim recollection about it. She was a girl in the Goldfish Bowl many times, but she was just told to climb into this, what she called the dog basket, and move around. That was the limit of her knowledge. Anyway, we managed to find a goldfish bowl, the original goldfish bowl, with a slight crack. But silicon does wonderful things. So we have the original goldfish bowl. We have the original show fronts, which are magnificent, gaudy, colourful, painted in 1960 actually, by a scenic showland painter called Claude Bradley, who had painted these shows, and it's called the Flash. The outside of a show is called. And the flash is most important. The saying is, it's not the show that gets the dough, it's the flash that gets the cash. So what you see on the outside is of far more importance than what you're going to see on the inside. However, I felt that we needed to make the inside these days as good as possible. Sometimes sideshows had a bad reputation for not giving value for money. You'd pay your sixpence and you'd be somewhat disappointed when you came out, to say the least. For instance, a famous showman presented a tower of grease. Come and see the Tower of Grease, and that was a candle dripping wax.
Right.
A tower of grease.
Yeah.
And I'd probably be a bit disappointed. I might laugh, oh well, I've been had. That would be it. But I wanted to give them something.
How many times in a row would you laugh, though?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I thought, right, it's got to be good. So we reconstructed a Girl in a Goldfish Bowl prop using the original bowl. Sadly, the original illusion prop had disintegrated. So we salvaged what we could. But the great thing was the show fronts. And that's the important thing. They had been coated season after season with thick layers of varnish to protect them from the elements. And so the paintwork was absolutely magnificent. And with a little bit of woodwork, repairing rotten wood and bits and pieces, we managed to save the entire show fronts. And we worked on putting this show together at the Hull Magician Circle dinner. One of the visitors was Professor Vanessa Toulmin, who came to the dinner, and she was a guest of honour giving a speech, proposing the whole circle, and she saw it. And we were invited to go to a conference of visual delights in Sheffield at the university. And from then on, there was more interest in the shows. So thank you, Vanessa Toulmin and the National Fairground Archive, for that initial interest and that spur to carry on.
And when you say there was more interest, was this more interest within a kind of specialist interest, Fairground Archive Studies, Magic Society kind of area, or in a more public-fronting way?
There is a journal of visual delights, which we'd appeared in because of that, and we got people saying, "Oh my goodness, we've never seen sideshows. There aren't any more. There are no other live sideshows touring at all in this country. There aren't any." So this was a bit of a first, and I got a bit of a bug for it, which was not always to the liking of my colleagues in Magic Carpet Theatre, because the sideshows rather took over for a while, and we thought, oh well, we've done one, let's do another one. Let's have a go at recreating the Headless Lady. And the headless chair was in the barn, needed complete renovation. We worked with our designer from Magic Carpet Theatre, a guy called Dave Watt, who was an absolute genius, who helped us restore. But the great thing was, about all these shows, we had the original show fronts painted in, the Headless Lady painted in 1955, which is absolutely brilliant. And the Headless Lady particularly has a fascinating story and history. Going back to Germany, actually, where you are at the moment.
Yeah.
So we decided we'd do another one after the success of the Goldfish Bowl and the reaction of the audience going in and seeing a tiny 5-inch girl swimming around in a goldfish bowl. And I created some lines and patter for it, because you have to remember, in the original presentation, in the days of the 50s and 60s, you just paid sixpence and you walked in and you saw a girl in the goldfish bowl and you walked out again. That was it. Then there was a tape playing outside continuously, a loop, explaining, step right in, ladies and gentlemen, this is the show you can afford to see, you can't afford to miss. You're going to see a tiny 5-inch girl in a goldfish bowl. You won't believe your eyes when you see it, and etc. I have to say, the girl in the goldfish bowl, of course, is wearing a little tiny red bikini. Or in our case, we've changed it to a spotty yellow polka dot bikini. That there is a reason why. I hope you can make sense of all this. I'm jumping around a bit.
No, it's good.
There are, according to John Gresham, when I talked to him about sideshows before he died, before I had any thought that we would ever recreate his shows, which is what he wanted to do eventually, why he kept them. He had this idea of, I would like one day to create a museum of sideshows where people who've never had the chance to see them, new audiences can come and see these shows, and there won't be any others around. Sadly, he died, had a heart attack before he could achieve that aim. So I hope a little bit that we are actually recreating that for him now and fulfilling that aim, which is brilliant. John had a theory that the sideshows must have 3 essential elements. It must have horror, the bizarre, and, ka-ching, sex. If it has those 3 elements, you have the perfect show, and you can, it should be a winner. So, a girl in a goldfish bowl, being small, is tiny. That's bizarre. There isn't a lot of horror in it, but there's certainly sex. Because if you were a 12 or 13-year-old boy in the 1950s, there was no page 3. There was no internet, of course.
Right.
To see flesh, a naked girl, then you would pay your sixpence and go in to see the girl in the goldfish bowl. In fact, on occasion, the girl in the goldfish bowl became a little bit tired. The audiences apparently weren't going in. And she was a bit fed up, she was a bit tired, so she decided she'd sort of lie down, have a little bit of a sleep there. So she loosened her top of her bikini. And as she moved around, this bikini dropped off. This is the story, I'm told. And John Gresham was actually in the pay box. And he saw audiences coming in, but no one was coming out. And thought, my goodness, what's going on here? And of course he went in and realised what was happening, closed the show and woke her up, and she got dressed again. And but his reaction was bloody hell, if I'd have known that, I'd have charged a shilling. So that was quite fun. But anyway, so sex very important. So Girl in the Headless Lady, that's got a very interesting history. Allegedly, the first guy to present this was a man called Egon, E-G-O-N, Heinemann, H-E-I-N-N-E-M-A-N-N, Egon Heinemann. And he came over from, a lot of people, he was called, he went over to America eventually, and he was called Dutch. A lot of people thought he was from the Netherlands. But in actual fact, I think the Dutch was actually Deutsch, meant to be. He was actually from German parentage. But he was born in America. And if you look in the various sideshow books, particularly some of the American ones, they will say he was a German who came over from Hamburg to England to present for the first time the Girl in the Goldfish Bowl show in Blackpool at Luna Park in the mid-1930s. Well, he came over from Germany, but he was actually born in America. His father was some sort of showman as well and toured around. Egon Heinemann was in Germany in the 1930s and escaped into Switzerland at some point and was given an emergency passport by the American embassy. I assume that is because he was Jewish and he was fleeing the Nazis. He came over and sent a message to an acquaintance of his who was called Vic Jeffries, a showman in England. Vic Jeffries met him and went into partnership with him to present the Headless Lady in Blackpool at Luna Park. That's where it was seen for the first time in the world. And I don't know where Egon Heinemann got the show from. Whether he was the inventor, the originator, how it originated, I don't know. That would be fascinating to investigate and to find out. Anyway, he arrived and they put the show on, and they also took it to London, to the agricultural halls. It was recorded in the newspaper The World's Fair, their appearances there, and there were photographs of Egon Heinemann and Vic Jeffries with the Girl in the Goldfish Bowl. With the Headless Lady, the Headless Lady.
Right.
And they are original pictures from the 1930s. So, John Gresham was a great friend of Vic Jeffries, and that's where our Girl in the Goldfish Bowl came from. John created his own showfront in 1955, and he used the original apparatus which Vic Jeffries and Egon Heinemann had.
Huh.
After the run at Luna Park in Blackpool, Egon Heinemann left with the show and went to the World's Fair in New York in I can't remember the exact dates at the minute off the top of my head, 35, 36, something like that. And presented the show. From there, it was widely copied. And if you look in Greater Magic, which was published around that time,
right,
in the very back pages, there is an illustration of the Headless Lady and how it's done. So it's sort of interesting, how did that get in there with the illustration? Later on, David Bamberg, Fu Manchu, also used a Headless Lady and had it down in South America. And it spread. Everyone had Headless Ladies. There were Headless Ladies everywhere, in sideshows, in shows, it was incredibly widely copied. As is the case, the Sawing in Half and Selbit and others, of course, Golden.
Right.
People wanted to jump on the bandwagon.
Yeah.
John Gresham created his show in 1955, and he had his own show fronts created, and he toured it to the various seaside resorts. He said it was his biggest money taker. It's the most popular show, next to another show he had called Miranda, which was a girl entombed in 2 tons of water. I'll tell you about it in a minute. So the Headless Lady has fascinated me, and we again wrote a presentation for it, based to some extent on John's lecture. The spiel inside was called a lecture, and so we used some of John Gresham's talk, but made it, and it certainly got horror, because we've added to it. We have medical apparatus, and we have breathing apparatus with the bellows and all the tubes and everything going into her, and the blood being pumped around, and the noise of the bellows is it's great. Pat Gresham said that when they first presented the show in the 1950s, they always kept smelling salts back handy, because people would faint when they opened the doors, possibly helped by the disinfectant that they would put out in saucers, and that would be wafted over the audience. The hospital smell of disinfectant, which we do now as well, and have that, which is great there. I have to say, we haven't had anybody faint yet.
Right.
But that's probably...
But it's a work in progress.
Yes, we're going to work on that, I think. But it's a reveal. We've modernised it a little bit, the spiel. Like the girl in the goldfish bowl, we've used Bobby Darin's Splish Splash, I Was Taking a Bath, which John Gresham didn't use. So we talk about the girl in the goldfish bowl. We have the sounds of the girl climbing up a little ladder. So, she's behind here now. She's getting ready in her little red bikini. Oh, you're excited already, young man. How old are you? You're 10. Oh, I see. Well, that's why you're on the front row here. All this. And, you can hear her climbing up now, and then you hear the sound effects of her going up the steps, and then a splash, and then the curtains open, soon pull back, and Bobby Darin comes on. Splish Splash, she was taking a bath. Yes, you can see her now. There she is, and you can give her a wave. And we have an original sign from 1960. John Gresham was the first person to do the girl in the goldfish bowl in this country. It was done in America, and plans have been published over there, but John was the first one to do it in this country in 1960. And we have his original sign, which was on below the bowl on the front of the prop. And it says, handwritten by a sign writer, it says, she's called Cleo, the girl in the goldfish bowl. Cleo can hear you, can see you, but she can't hear you. So it's no use shouting. Give her a wave and she'll wave back. Apparently that was to stop the teddy boys and the lads at the time shouting, get 'em off, and show us your tits and things like this. So that was the sort of, that was his idea. That might stop them. I suspect it probably wouldn't. I think probably audiences were a little bit more unruly in those days, because he would cover the front of his shows with black dress net, very fine gauze and net, and that was to stop them throwing cigarette ends and chewing gum and stuff at the girls who were in the shows. And that was an interest. We've never had that here, but we usually have a presenter in front, of course, so it's slightly different.
Right.
But we haven't had that. Although we have had people go in repeatedly, including one young magician, aged 15, at Hull, who, when we filmed the show, we looked back at the show footage just to see what it was happening, noticed that he'd been in 6 or 5 times to see the show. To look at the girl in the goldfish bowl. So
I'm sure it was an interest in the mechanics behind the effect rather than anything else.
I think that's what it would be, absolutely, I'm sure, yes. He was interested in the technical aspects, yes. Nothing to do with the 17-year-old girl in the bowl. So it's fun. So Headless Lady is great. And the show front, sex, yes. The girl is wearing a sort of 1950s sexy red dress, which is very low cut. At her, just above her knee, there's a little bit of sexy white lace showing, and instead of this show front drawing or painting is taken from this picture of the 1930s of Egon Heinemann. I'll send you the picture of the original photograph, and I'll send you the picture of the show front, because they are taken, the painting is taken from this. And the guy painted them, Claude Bradley, his method of painting was to take a reference drawing and project it via an epidiascope onto a flat.
Okay.
And then the outline. But because it was an old-fashioned epidiascope with an oil lamp, and he painted them in the winter, allegedly his nose dripping, and a hot water bottle strapped on the front and strapped on the back. The image would be reversed. And you can see that in the painting there is Vic Jeffries, clearly his likeness, stood on one side of the girl in the goldfish bowl, of the headless lady, and on the other side, instead of Egon Heinemann, he's painted a sexy nurse in a sexy nurse's outfit with a little short skirt and dark tights on. So he's added that into it there. And then on the other side there are doctors looking over on the other side of the flat. I'll send you the pictures, you'll see. They're great fun. And the fact that they are the original show fronts painted in the 50s, a wonderful piece of popular culture and popular fairground art that we have. It's absolutely brilliant that we've been able to preserve these and show these.
Yeah, you talk quite a lot about the...
I'm talking all the time.
No, about the fact that you've got original elements of the things in it, like some of the original props or some of the original show fronts, the original artwork and so on. How important do you think it is, or why do you think it's important that it's done this way rather than, let's say, you've got a photograph and you've just built the whole thing from scratch and redone it today, as it were? Well,
we have done that. We have built a whole show from scratch with a photograph, from a photograph. I think it's important that these old sideshows are preserved, and the fact that they are going out and new audiences are seeing them and seeing the original shows, I think that's important. I suspect not all our audiences realise that they are looking at the actual show front that their grandparents would have seen in the 50s when they go in Blackpool or wherever they saw them at the time. We get people coming in to see the shows who saw the original shows. For instance, in Blackpool, when we presented the shows in Showzan, a guy came in on a bus in his 80s from Burnley, one of the Lancashire mill towns. He came in and he said, I remember going to see that when I used to come and stay with my aunt in her boarding house next to the promenade in Blackpool, and I saw the headless lady. And it always impressed me that she had blood around the junction where the tubes go into her neck. And I said, blood? And he said, yes. So I said, oh, right. So I went back to the original photos with a magnifying glass, and sure enough, there are specks of blood on it. And that afternoon, on ours, where cotton wool interfaces between the tubes and the neck, there was some blood on there. So we added that in. But I hadn't realised that, so it was great to have that first-hand knowledge and reference from someone who had really seen the show. You mentioned talking about that, so I think it is important to preserve those shows and to show them for new audiences. But we have actually recreated a show completely from scratch. John had a show called The Butterfly Girl, which he presented in Rhyl and in Scarborough. And he claimed it wasn't one of his most successful shows. He said it was too pretty. Basically, it was like a girl's head on a sphinx table with a butterfly body and wings. That was it. Fred Van Buren saw the show at Scarborough in 1963, I think, and he described it, but he couldn't quite remember whether you could see whether there was, like the Sphinx table, whether you could see underneath the table and there was nothing seemingly there. Well, by now we'd already recreated John Gresham's Living Half Lady with the original show fronts for the Living Half Lady, and we use the girl is on a table. We're actually it's not a Sphinx table with a centre leg.
Mm-hmm.
It's based on a Morit idea, which is different to how John presented it, but I wanted to change it slightly. We use some of the elements of John's original table. There's a little plinth on top, and I'll send you a picture, but this is based on a Morit idea, which I don't think is particularly well known or used at the moment anyway. So, and it certainly works, because I noticed at Blackpool, when we've had magicians coming in from the convention, walking from one side to the other of the booth, the sideshow booth, I can't work out exactly how this is done. Anyway, so we already had a girl on a table, and the idea of doing another version of that didn't appeal to me. We wanted to create the butterfly girl. All we had was a photograph of the outside of the show, no inside. And it was done in Rill. It was done with 2 shows. The Butterfly Girl next door to the Vampire's Cave. John put in the Vampire's Cave, which was fruit bats. And they slept they're nocturnal. So to keep them moving around and flying during the daytime, when you wanted your punters to come in and pay, he would keep the lights on inside at night, turn them off in the daytime, and they would fly. And they were small fruit bats. They weren't really huge vampire bats like the outside, the flash displayed, of course.
Yeah.
And occasionally, apparently, they would escape. And the proprietor, John's manager there, Bob Denver, would have Denzar, D-E-N-Z-A-R. Bob Denzar would have of Skeletons Alive fame in pantos and shows. He would go up a ladder and collect them from a tree or lamppost, wherever they were hanging upside down, by saying, "Come on, Hilda, come on, Hilda, come on back over here," which really sort of gave the lie to the vampire eating the bats there. But it did create good publicity that they had escaped, of course, in the local paper. Anyway, so the Butterfly Girl, what were we going to do? How could we recreate this show without using a head on a table and a body and a Sphinx table? And I was around at Eddie's house, and you've been to Eddie's house, you've seen his upstairs magic room, haven't you?
Yeah.
Well, he has a stock poster, a Dr. Lynn stock poster, of a Living Half Lady on a swing in his magic den upstairs. And I was sat with Eddie, and I can't remember who else was there, having a coffee, or possibly a G&T more like, and Eddie's, and looking at this Half Lady stock poster. Is that a G&T?
I wish.
Yeah. Oh.
We're not that far ahead time-wise.
Oh, not till after 6 o'clock tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I was looking at it and I thought, crikey, a girl on a swing. Could we put a butterfly girl with wings, and then a sort of the torso of the butterfly bit just underneath the swing? Could she be gripping onto it with tentacles or something, claws or whatever? And she could swing. And would that impart movement to flimsy wings? And that she could move. And it isn't a Sphinx table, it's a black artifact, isn't it? The Dr. Lynn effect, a girl on a half girl on a swing. So we decided this is what we would do. And I said to Eddie, very excitedly, "This is what we're going to do, Eddie. This is the Butterfly Girl here." And so we created it. And we were commissioned to create a new show for Blackpool Council. So we had a great friend, designer, who works a show called the Insect Circus, called Mark Copeland, who lives in Bury St Edmunds, not from Marco. And he's a brilliant artist. He'd worked in films and model making, all sorts of things. So he made the Butterfly Girl frontage, and we constructed the rest of the apparatus for the girl, the behind the scenes part, which was made in Hull. Hull's, it has to be suspended, of course, and Hull's it's still a port, and we have ship's chandlers. So getting suspension equipment and wire ropes and stuff like that was a perfect place to be. Just happened to be very good. We had great help in doing that, and finding the thinnest possible wires to suspend the girl safely. And then we had the entire booth, the cave that you look into, the Butterfly Girl cave. How was that had to be black? That was made in Bradford. The material was all sewn and made to size in Bradford, and the show